Hey guys, and welcome to the video. So as you're probably aware, there's a bunch of different NPCs in Terraria, and they all have a unique way of defending themselves when in danger. Knowing this, what I want to do today is find out which NPCs have the best attacks, and then test those NPCs against some hard bosses. The first NPC I want to test is the brand new princess, and as you can see by her performance against the King Slime, she has a very powerful ranged attack that can hit multiple targets at once. And as you will see with the NPCs coming up, her rate of fire is probably her best attribute. Next we have the merchant, and he has a decent range attack that can pierce, but his main problem is that he rarely uses this attack and instead prefers to run away, so I can confidently say that he is worse than the princess. After the merchant we have the nurse, and although her attacks aren't that special, she does have the unique ability of being able to heal herself and nearby NPCs, which can help her stand out from the rest. However, because she spends a lot of time healing, she rarely attacks, so I can't put her that high on the ranking. Next we have the arms dealer, who attacks with a rapid fire mini shark, which has surprisingly good accuracy. Unfortunately, his bullets don't pierce, but they still do good damage, so I can rank him pretty high. Next up we have the dryad, and she has one of the most unique attacks out of all the NPCs. Although her damage isn't the best, her attack is AoE, so it hits everything within her range, which allows her to do some good damage against swarms of enemies. After the dryad is the guide, and his attack is pretty basic. However, he does upgrade his attack to flame arrows in hard mode, which allows him to inflict burning on his enemies. Unfortunately though, the guide suffers from a similar fate as the merchant and spends a lot of his time running away instead of fighting. Next up we have the demolitionist, and he has a pretty good grenade attack that can deal decent splash damage. However, his aim and range are both pretty bad, which definitely hurts his fighting capabilities. Next up is the clother, which is actually one of the best NPCs for attacking. The projectiles that he shoots are fast and capable of piercing. He also is quite a bit more aggressive than most of the other NPCs, which allows him to get much more damage in on his enemies. And now that we've gotten through the first few NPCs, it's time for some rapid fire analysis. The Goblin Tinkerer does high damage, but struggles to get his attacks to land. The Wizard has very powerful attacks, but has unpredictable aim and doesn't attack as much as he should. The Mechanic has a powerful boomerang-like attack that hits multiple times, but seems to miss about half of her attacks, especially at range. The Truffle has a weird attack that doesn't really aim at an enemy, but when the projectiles do hit, they do very high damage, and the amount that he spawns provides good DPS overall. The Steampunker has a very similar attack to the arms dealer, but seems to shoot more, and just in general be more aggressive. The Die Trader is one of the few NPCs to only have a melee attack, which makes him extremely bad against large and powerful enemies. The Party Girl has an almost identical attack to the Demolitionist, however she seems to do slightly better DPS. The Painter has a pretty good burst attack, but suffers from a low base damage, which hurts his fighting capabilities. The Witch Doctor has a pretty mediocre attack, and prefers to run away instead of fighting. The Stylist is another NPC that can only melee, and struggles with the same problems as the Die Trader. The Angler has a similar attack to the Merchant, but it does more damage. The Tax Collector is yet another melee NPC, and as you would expect, performs the same as the other two. The Tavern Keep has a decent ranged attack, but for some reason he really hates to use it and just prefers to stand there like an idiot. The Golfer reminds me a lot of the Goblin Tinkerer with his attacks, and has about the same strengths and weaknesses. The Zoologist is the final melee NPC, however, her attacks are slightly different than the other three as she hits the enemies multiple times per swing. And finally we have Santa Claus, who throws a decent attack, but struggles to hit the target, making him much less effective. Alright, with the rapid fire out of the way, we're down to just the final two NPCs. First is the Cyborg. He has a unique ability of having 3 different attacks that he cycles through. One of these attacks is a fast-moving rocket that does good splash damage. Another is a grenade that again deals good splash damage. And the final attack is a landmine that he throws out, and when stepped on, the mine deals massive damage. Combining all 3 of these attacks, the Cyborg becomes one of the best fighting NPCs. And finally, last but not least, we have the Pirate, who cycles between shooting a rapid-fire coin gun for decent damage and firing off a fast-moving cannonball, which pierces and deals very high damage. Between these two attacks, I would say that the cannonball is definitely better. However, they're both really good. His only downside is that he spends a good amount of time in between his attacks doing nothing. Nevertheless, he's still one of the best NPCs for fighting. So now that I've seen all of the NPCs in action, I can pretty confidently say that the Princess is the best when it comes to offense. However, there are some other powerful NPCs that know a thing or two about fighting. So what I want to do now is take the top NPCs and see how well they do against some late game bosses. First we have the twins, and because this boss spends most of its time in the air, quite a few of the NPCs have a hard time hitting it. However, the Truffle and the Princess don't struggle with the same problem, and manage to take down the boss after only a couple minutes. Next up is Golem, and even though I spawned him in his enraged state, the 5 NPCs actually managed to defeat him in around a minute and a half. Now this isn't too much of a surprise, surprise, seeing Gollum is a pretty easy boss, but it's still impressive that these NPCs are able to take down bosses at all, even if the boss's attacks are being shot at me. The final boss I set them up against was Empress Elite, and well, this fight didn't go as well as the other two. But let's be honest, these NPCs still did way better than I expected them to, and I learned quite a few things that I didn't know before. But with that, we've reached the end of my test. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing to be notified when I upload more in the future. And with that out of the way, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Thank you to Beav Notice Me Senpai and all my other patrons for helping make this video possible.